You think you know the people you spend 40 hours a week with. You share coffee with them, complain about deadlines, maybe you celebrate a small victory or two. You sit separated by a thin wall of fabric and plastic, so close you can hear them breathe, so close you can smell the lunch they brought from home. You build this kind of trust, a workplace familiarity that feels normal, safe. At least I thought I did. That was my first mistake. And it's the reason this story has been shared in whispers on forums and is now being told here as a warning. Because the most dangerous part of my job wasn't a tight deadline or a demanding client. It was the man in the cubicle right next to mine. My job was aggressively, beautifully mundane. I worked for a mid-level logistics company, a place so beige it felt like the color itself designed it. Our office was on the 7th floor of a glass building overlooking a parking lot and a freeway. The soundtrack to my day was the low hum of the AC, the distant roar of traffic, and the gentle clicking of a dozen keyboards. It was predictable. It was stable. And I thought it was safe. My cubicle was a carbon copy of all the others, a small, gray-walled square. I'd tried to liven up with a succulent that was slowly giving up on life and a few photos of my dog. To my right was Sarah, who coordinated shipments and always had emergency chocolate. And to my left was Mark. For the first 6 months, Mark was just a presence. He was quiet, efficient, and seemed almost painfully shy. He never joined us for lunch, never offered more than a polite nod in a conversation. His cubicle was the polar opposite of mine, sterile and empty, except for a company mug and a single, perfectly straight notepad. He was just Mark, the quiet guy, harmless. We all have a Mark in our office, right? But what you have to understand is that sometimes behind all that quiet, something else is growing. Something is watching. The shift was so subtle I almost missed it. It started with coffee. I use a very specific, slightly obnoxious French vanilla creamer. One Monday, I walked into the break room and there was Mark at the counter using my creamer. I laughed. "Hey, I see you've discovered the good stuff," I said. He just looked at me, his face strangely blank, and said, "I wanted to see what it was like." He didn't smile. It was weird, but I brushed it off. A week later, he bought the exact same noise-canceling headphones I wore, the ones I'd saved up for. Then he started using little phrases I used, bits of slang he'd overheard. It was subtle, unsettling mimicry. The real jolt came one afternoon. I was complaining to Sarah that my car was making a funny noise. Mark, who I didn't even realize was listening, swiveled in his chair. "It's the CV axle," he said, his eyes still glued to his monitor. "It makes a clicking sound on sharp right turns, like the one into your apartment complex." A cold dread just washed over me. I'd never told anyone at work where I lived. My apartment was 15 miles from the office. There was absolutely no reason for him to know that. When I asked him how he knew, he just shrugged. "I see a lot of cars, just a good guess." But it wasn't a guess. We both knew it. That was the first time I felt that spike of real, genuine fear. That was the moment the mundane started to crack. After the car comment, I tried to pull back. I got quieter, stopped joining office chatter. But the distance just seemed to make him bolder. Small, personal things started disappearing from my desk, a pen I really liked, a little bottle of hand sanitizer. I'd find them a day or two later on his desk as if he was just taking little pieces of my life for himself. Then the gifts started. First, a chocolate bar on my keyboard. Then a book one mentioned wanting to read a week earlier. I know now this is a classic stalking tactic, sending unwanted gifts to create a connection where there isn't one. Each time, I'd thank him politely while my stomach twisted into a knot. Every gift felt less like a kindness and more like a transaction, a reminder that I was being watched. My anxiety started seeping into my work. I couldn't concentrate. I was constantly on edge. The sound of his chair swiveling would make my heart pound. It's hard to explain what that kind of sustained, low-grade harassment does to you. Victims often report chronic stress, anxiety, and the feeling of never being safe. I started taking the long way to the bathroom just so I wouldn't have to walk past his desk. I knew I had to do something. I went to HR. I sat in a sterile little office and laid out the whole story for a woman named Brenda. I told her about the comments, the mimicking, the gifts, that awful feeling of being watched. She listened with this practiced sympathetic nod, and then she delivered the soul-crushing conclusion. "He hasn't actually threatened you, has he?" she asked. "He hasn't done anything explicitly against company policy. It sounds like he might just have a crush on you, and he's a little socially awkward." I was floored. I felt humiliated, dismissed, and completely alone. It's a tragically common reaction. Many victims don't report stalking because they're afraid of being judged or minimized, and when they do, their fears are often brushed aside. Brenda suggested I just be direct with him. She documented my complaint, but the message was loud and clear: you're on your own. It's the recurring theme in these nightmares, isn't it? The system that's supposed to protect you just doesn't. With HR basically giving him a green light, Mark's behavior escalated. He started spreading rumors, telling people we were friends outside of work, that we had some kind of inside joke. It was all a calculated campaign to build a false story of intimacy. The breaking point was a Thursday night. I was working late to finish a quarterly report. By 7, the office was a ghost town. Just me, the hume of the servers, and Sarah's wilting plant. And as I suddenly realized Mark, I didn't hear him come up behind me. I just felt a presence, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. He was standing at the entrance to my cubicle, completely blocking me in. He wasn't touching me, but his closeness felt like a physical weight. "Working late?" he asked, his voice low. "Just finishing up," I said. I tried to keep my voice steady, my eyes locked on my monitor. "You work too hard," he said. "You get home, you walk your dog, you eat the same salad for dinner. You watch 2 episodes of that crime show, and then you're asleep by 11. You need more fun." Every word hit me like a physical blow. He just recited my evening routine perfectly. This wasn't a guess, it was surveillance. He knew my schedule, my private habits. The boredom I used to feel about my job was gone, replaced by pure terror. The line between work and home had been completely erased. He took another step into my space. His face wasn't angry. It was this look of profound, disturbing disappointment. "I'm just trying to look out for you," he said, his voice soft. "No one else here really sees you." "I do. I see all of you, and I just want to be a part of it. Why won't you let me be a part of it?" The threat in his calm, obsessive words was more terrifying than any scream. He had this twisted idea about us, a belief that he had a right to my life. In his mind, he wasn't just a coworker. He was my protector, and I was his possession. That was the night I finally understood I wasn't dealing with an awkward crush. I was dealing with a dangerous obsession. My salvation, oddly enough, was the nightly cleaning crew. The rattle of their cart coming down the hallway was enough to break his trance. He just blinked, stepped back, and said good night before walking back to his desk like absolutely nothing happened. I sat there paralyzed for a full 5 minutes. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely zip my bag. I didn't go home. I drove to a 24-hour diner, sat in a booth, and sobbed on the phone to a friend. The next morning, I called the police and filed a report. With that police report number, I went back to HR. This time they listened. The threat was no longer something they could deny. Mark was suspended and security escorted him out of the building that afternoon. I never saw him in person again, but it wasn't over. I wish I could say it was. The aftermath was a slow, grinding recovery. I got a restraining order, but it didn't bring the peace of mind I thought it would. The psychological impact was devastating. For months, I was a wreck, living in a constant state of high alert, feeling symptoms much like PSD, hypervigilance, flashbacks, the works. I felt totally alienated from my colleagues. Some looked at me with pity, others with suspicion, as if I'd somehow brought this on myself. I eventually had to quit. Those beige office walls didn't feel mundane anymore. They felt like the set of a horror film and I was the star. Turns out I'm not alone in that. Studies show over half of stalking victims end up leaving their jobs because of the trauma. This story isn't unique, and that's the most terrifying part. So many people have their own version of this, a person who crossed a line and made them feel unsafe in the one place they absolutely had to be every single day. If you've ever gone through something like this, please consider sharing your story in the comments. Reading that you're not alone can be a lifeline. And if you think these kinds of true stories are important, please subscribe and hit the notification bell.